It was a grim day as Philip Wilson arrived at Newcastle Court for his sentencing hearing. Inside, his legal team argued he shouldn't go to jail, listing a litany of health complaints: heart problems, diabetes, anxiety, depression and possibly early Alzheimer's disease. Barrister Ian Temby QC said he's a relatively old man in poor health and a custodial sentence would be unusually hard on him. Wilson is the highest-ranking Catholic clergyman in the world to be convicted of concealing child sex abuse. His lawyers argued a good behaviour bond would be a sufficient penalty, a submission that angered abuse survivors.
If our legal system slaps a bond on this bloke, when it's international news, it'll make our system look like that we're inadequate.
The description given by his defence team makes you wonder how he's still walking.
Archbishop, at what point would you resign?
Philip Wilson has stepped aside as Archbishop but has not resigned, nor has he been dismissed.
The Archbishop is saying he is too unwell to serve a custodial sentence, and yet as recently as a few months ago he told the people of Adelaide that despite his medical conditions he intended to stay Archbishop for another 8 years. I find that completely untenable.
The Crown Prosecutor Gareth Harrison said Wilson has lied to the court, continues to lie to survivors and has shown no remorse or contrition. He said the court needed to send the strongest message possible to the world.
The root of each of those lies is the unflinching loyalty that he has to the Catholic Church and protecting it at all costs. In 2 weeks, Archbishop Wilson and the world will learn his fate. Ben Millington, ABC News, Newcastle.
The Archbishop of Adelaide, Philip Wilson, is refusing to resign after being convicted of concealing child sexual abuse. Archbishop Wilson is the most senior clergyman in the world to be convicted of the offence and has been sentenced to 12 months in detention. In a statement, the Archbishop says he intends to appeal the decision and he'll only resign if his bid is unsuccessful.
On the subject of religiously empowered sin, this gentleman here, a very high Archbishop in the Catholic Church, Archbishop Philip Wilson, has been caught covering up child sexual abuse. Now, this should be a warning to the Watchtower and Tract Society of the Jehovah's Witnesses and governing body that the Australian government isn't going to muck around with these people. Archbishop Philip Wilson has been sentenced to 12 months detention for concealing child sexual abuse. Magistrate Robert Stone adjourned the matter to August 14 while Wilson's home detention order is assessed for suitability. They get away with a lot, these blokes. In May, the 67-year-old was found guilty of concealing the sexual abuse of children between 2004 and 2006 at the hands of a pedophile priest named Jim Fletcher in the 1970s. Wilson is the most senior clergyman in the world to be convicted of concealing child sexual abuse. Now, this has to be a warning to these religious organisations that are trying to make excuses for sexual abuse, particularly the Watchtower and Tract Society of Jehovah's Witnesses and the governing body, who's covered up over 1,006 child abuse scandals that were never reported to the authorities. Now, here's a picture of the pedophile here, and this is what it says. Late pedophile priest James Patrick Fletcher's crime continue to hurt the Catholic Church. This is from the Advertiser. Okay, the pedophile priest James Patrick Fletcher died in prison in 2006, but the ghosts of his depraved crimes continue to haunt the Catholic Church. Fletcher, known to his trusting congregation as Father Jim, was finally outed as a depraved and calculating pedophile when he was jailed for molesting an older boy in the early 1990s. They're calculated, says it here, doesn't it? The disgraced priest died while serving his sentence, but revelations in the past decade have shown his offending stretched back to the least the 1970s. Fletcher's housemate at the Maitland Newcastle Diocese was a young priest by the name of Philip Wilson, now the Archbishop of Adelaide. This is a gentleman that's in all this trouble now. Archbishop Bishop Wilson alleged involvement in turning a blind eye to or covering up Fletcher's heinous crimes was the subject of a special inquiry on Tuesday and resulted in a criminal charge. I think the Jehovah's Witnesses would be really panicking at the moment after this. This was just the other day. One of Fletcher's victims who was abused in the house, the priest shared with the now Archbishop, has previously said he cannot accept that Archbishop Wilson did not know what was going on. The man has said Archbishop Wilson saw him coming and going from the Maitland house, where he suffered abuse in the Fletcher's bedroom during afternoons and after school. He later challenged Archbishop Wilson about what he knew and whether he should have intervened, but said the decorated priest believed Fletcher was a good bloke who had no reason to suspect anything as a pedophile, as it were. The victim took his complaint to New South Wales Police in 2010, and the matter was taken up by Strike Force Lantel, established to investigate separate cover-up allegations about a different priest. Now, the charge against Archbishop Wilson represents the first major development in the strike force. Well, this is going to go on in Australia. Despite the apparent brazen nature of Fletcher's offending, and this is the problem in religion today, nobody reported him as a deviant until Newcastle man Daniel Feenman went to police over his abuse in the late 80s and early 90s. Mr. Feenan's mother, Patricia, wrote a book titled Holy Hell, a Catholic family story of faith, betrayal and pain, which outlined her family's struggle to force the church to address the problem of child sexual abuse. Now, these places will not, for the life of them, take accountability. Now, Mrs. Feeman provided an insight into Fletcher's cunning and depraved methods, saying that he groomed the whole family by portraying himself as a kind and benevolent priest who could be trusted. Fletcher's true character could not have been further from his public persona. This guy was evil. After abusing Daniel Feenan, Fletcher pulled classic lines from the pedophile playbook, such as threatening to hurt his brothers if he ever revealed the truth. He threatened to hurt people if he revealed the truth. Goodness me. Now, despite his public disgrace, the Catholic Church continued to support Fletcher even in death. This is how relentless these organisations are in trying to prevent accountability. The 65-year-old was buried in the priest section of Sandgate Cemetery near Newcastle, which is only an hour up the road from where I live, with a marble headstone celebrating his achievements. The honours outraged Fletcher's victims, who described the elaborate burial plot as a final insult. The funeral was attended by more than 30 fellow Catholic priests who turned up to farewell Fletcher despite knowing his crimes. Now, how do you measure that? Now, there's no glory in any of us, whether it be the victim or the perpetrator here, but this isn't a new thing to religion. There was a fellow in the Bible in 1 Samuel who was running the things of the Lord by the name of Eli, but his sons were corrupt. This is in 1 Samuel 2. Now, the sons of Eli were corrupt. They did not know the Lord, yet they were running the things of the Lord. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged flesh hook in his hand and take the meat. They were stealing from the meat. But this was Hophni and Phinehas. Now, the sin of these young men, was very great before the Lord. Now, these guys claimed to be the priests of the Lord, and Eli knew what they were doing. They were sleeping with the women, they were stealing from the offerings, they were doing all sorts of evils. But they were the priests, serving in the holy place and all the rest of it. And Eli was the head guy, and he was aware of it, but he never did anything about it. And this is similar to this. So don't think there's anything new under the sun. These religious people will hide their sins. And this is where I want to come back to Jimmy Swaggart. At least he come out. Jimmy Swaggart, the American preacher who was caught with a prostitute many years ago, at least that man came out and apologised, and he lost his ministry. there's only a handful of people that follow him now, but at least he come out and he apologised, didn't he? He gave it all up. He humbled himself and said sorry and lost it all. Whereas a lot of these guys are just defiant today. This is Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist. Bye for now.